Italy is well known and loved worldwide for the huge variety of its food, of its art, architecture, culture, landscape, but not many people are aware of the incredible diversity, incredible linguistic diversity that we experience in this country. Italy is a country with just about 60 million people, so you would think that we are fine with one language. Well, enter regional dialects, which actually vary from not just from region to region, but actually from town to town. But how is that possible? Well, before we reply to that question, let's talk about why it is important to know about this aspect of the Italian language. Well, first of all, it's of course an interesting, very interesting linguistic phenomenon. But more especially, more importantly, it's something that's a huge part of our culture and history. So if you're learning Italian or you're traveling to Italy, this is something you need to be aware of. So today I want to take you with me in this fascinating journey through centuries of invasions, trade, geographical isolation, geopolitical changes that shape Italy and its language into what we know and love today. My wish is that by the end of this video you will be able to appreciate and understand more this peculiar aspect of our country and language. So, iniziamo. Let's begin. When we talk about regional dialects, we need to start from the ancient Roman era. You got me right. We need to travel back to the ancient Roman Empire and keep in mind that at its peak, the Roman Empire spanned from Spain to the Middle East and from England to Northern Africa. And wherever the Roman Empire expanded, of course it brought its language with it, which was Latin, il Latino. Latin was spread all over the empire and of course mixed with the local languages. But Latin did not remain intact. It developed into a more common form, which was very different from the original form of the poets and the authors, the Latin poets and authors. And that form was called Latino Volgare, the vulgar Latin. And the word vulgar, interestingly enough, comes from Latin and means of the people. So Latin changed into a language that was less formal and was more spoken by common people. And this was another change that happened during those times. Then the Roman Empire fell and we had the invasions of the so-called barbarians. And every time a tribe would invade Italy, of course they would bring with them their culture, their customs, and their languages. So even the foreign languages, the foreign idioms of the barbarians and of the tribes mixed with the languages of every part of Italy. Then, with the medieval age, Italy was completely different than in the past. You have to keep in mind that since the fall of the Roman Empire to 1861, Italy was not a unified country anymore. So this is something not many people realize, but we haven't been a united country for 1400 years. In those 1400 years, Italy was not a unified country and instead was a mosaic of different city-states, republics, like kingdoms, all different and separated, each one with their own customs, laws, and of course, languages. Keep in mind that what today we could travel in, like the distance that we could travel today in 1 hour, of course with today's standards, back then could mean and most likely meant a different country. So that's also why we have developed this huge variety of languages inside the territory of a country like Italy, which is not that huge. Geography has also played a huge role in the development of local dialects. Italy has an incredible varied landscape, and for example, elements like the mountains or the sea have impacted in the development of local idioms. Take the mountains. In Italy, we have two major mountain chains. The Alps, le Alpi in the north, which kind of separate Italy from the rest of Europe, and the Apennines, gli Appennini, which run in the middle of the country, through the whole country, like a spine. These mountains, with their peaks and isolated valleys, have of course fostered and kind of forced the development of local communities. And those local communities, guess what, had their own dialects, they had their own languages and idioms. Let me share two examples with you. The first one is il Ladino, Latin, which is not Latin, must not be confused with that. Latin was the old Roman language. Latin, with a D, il Ladino, is the dialect that's still nowadays spoken in North Italy, on the Alps, in a specific portion of the Alps, which is the Dolomites, le Dolomiti. Le Dolomiti are a portion of the Alps on the northeast of Italy. And Latin, il Ladino, is very, very different from the Italian language. In fact, it has it's much more influenced by Germanic languages. And that's why, because they were on the mountains and they were more isolated from the rest of Italy. Another example of this is the sea. The sea, of course, has been the means for a lot of trade and exchanges between different cultures, but has also been a reason for isolation in some cases. The major case we have in Italy is Sardinia, La Sardegna. Sardinia is one of the main islands of Italy, and it is quite distant from the mainland, so it wasn't that easy to reach in the past. And that fostered the isolation of the island that still shows through into their dialects nowadays, because il sardo, the Sardinian dialect, is very different from the Italian language and the dialects of the mainland, and still has traces of pre-Roman languages. The unification of Italy in 1861, of course, had a very relevant impact on the language that we speak today in Italy. If you remember what we said earlier, Italy hadn't been united in the same country for 1400 centuries. That's a lot of time. So you can imagine when Italy finally was brought together in 1861, there was a need to create a common language. So they thought of finding one dialect that could serve as a basis for the new common language, the new standard Italian. And Florentine, Tuscan dialect, and specifically the Florentine variation of the middle class Florentine, was chosen to be used as the basis of the new Italian language. Why that happened? Well, there were essentially three main reasons. The first one was the geographical centrality of Florence, of Tuscany in Italy. Second, the cultural and historical importance of Florence. And third, the literary prestige of Florence that was created by authors and poets like Dante Alighieri, Francesco Petrarca, and Giovanni Boccaccio. All these elements brought to peak the Florentine dialect, and remember, the variant of the middle class, as the basis of the standard Italian language. But the process to a unified language wasn't that easy nor that quick. It has been estimated that when Italy was unified, only 2.5% of the population actually spoke Italian. Of course, there was something called passive competence, which is the ability of understanding a language even if you don't speak it. But still, could you believe that just 2.5% of the population of Italy at that time was able to speak Italian, what did the other people speak? Dialects, of course. Those were the languages of all the parts of the country. So over time, with the school system, the national school system, and also later on with mass media have had a huge impact in the spread of the standard Italian language. But this is a story for another time, and if you want to know about it, let me know. With time, with the unified national school system and with mass media, eventually the standard Italian language has spread through the country. So what is the situation nowadays? Well, dialects are still spoken, but in very familiar contexts, in like very isolated areas of the country, and by older people, and I mean very old people. Other than those situations, you will find that we all speak standard Italian in Italy, so no worries. We are taught standard Italian in schools. Standard Italian is what we teach as teachers, and standard Italian is what it's used in bars, restaurants, hotels, museums, shops, wherever you offices, even when we native Italians work at our workplace. Of course we use standard Italian. That's our language nowadays. But the good news is that despite the usage and the birth of this national language, we still have those dialects, and we still have that diversity that makes our country so rich. So let's go through some of the main dialects, regional dialects of Italy. Let's go from north to south. Let's start with Piemontese, which is the dialect of Piemonte, a region in the northwest of Italy, which is highly influenced by French because of the vicinity, the proximity between Piemonte to France. In the north, we also find Veneto, which is the dialect of the Veneto region, the region, to give you some context, where Venice is. Well, Veneto, we talked about it just a little bit earlier, talking about Ladino. Ladino is a variant in Veneto of the dialect, the Veneto dialect, which has a lot of influences from Germanic languages. If we go further down to central Italy, of course, we meet Toscano. And Toscano has been celebrated for centuries for its beauty, especially because it's very clear and clean sound. And that's why it has been selected, and specifically the Florentine variation, to be the basis of the Italian language. But the Florentine dialect and Toscan dialect can have does have some peculiarities, that, especially in pronunciation, that are very different from standard Italian. Let's head further down further south, and we meet, of course, Romanesco, which is the dialect of Rome. And Romanesco really depicts the typical Roman personality, I mean the personality of people from Rome, and it's a very picturesque dialect with a lot of colorful expressions. Going even more south, we encounter Napoletano. Napoletano is the dialect of Naples and is probably one of the most known and one of the most spoken dialects outside of Italy. And it's very well known for its musicality, and it also really expresses the personality of the people from Campania, the region, and Naples. Going further down, let's go to Sicily. And Sicily has had a lot of dominations, and those dominations show through in the dialect, which is actually very much influenced by Arabic and by Spanish language. So that's the peculiarity of the idioms of Sicily. Finally, if we go to Sardinia, La Sardegna, we find il Sardo. And as I said before, Sardo is very different from the mainland dialects, and it still has pre-Roman traces. So as you can see, and I just named some of the main dialects of Italy, and keep in mind, we don't only have regional dialects. Actually, dialects vary from from town to town. Always keep that in mind. If you got to this point, well, first of all, let me know that you got to this point by sharing a comment with what you learned today that you didn't know, and if you have a special connection with any Italian dialect. But since you have come so far, I want to share with you my personal experience as a native Italian speaker with dialects. How has that influenced my life? What has been, oops, mosquitoes. Wow, how has that influenced my experience as a native Italian speaker? Well, I was born and grew up in Sicily, in the city of Siracusa. So I'm quite proficient with Sicilian. But keep in mind, I'm proficient with the Syracusan, the variant of Siracusa, because as I told you, the dialect can be very different from city to city, and I will tell you, the Sicilian dialect from Siracusa is quite different from the Sicilian dialect from Palermo, for instance, or even from a closer city like Catania. So that was my background. Then about 15 years ago, I moved to central Italy in Abruzzo, which is a region in central Italy, because my husband is from Abruzzo. And I lived there for about 5 years, and I think I can understand and speak, I can understand it pretty well, and I can speak quite a little bit of Abruzzese. Okay. Then some years ago we moved to Marche. Marche is another region of central Italy on the Adriatic coast. Well, believe it or not, we have been living here for about 10 years, and I can still nowadays I cannot understand anything of Marchegiano, which is the Marques dialect. I can't. When I hear my neighbors, which are very nice old Italian ladies, Marchegiano ladies, talking to each other from their balconies, another very typical Italian thing, I cannot understand anything of what they say. Not that I mean to intrude, but really it's weird, because it's like being in a different country. I cannot understand what they say. So this is to show, to let you understand how languages, and this is the main point probably of this video, one of the main points, is that dialects are different languages. They have a different pronunciation, they have a different vocabulary, they also have a different grammar than standard Italian. And so they are very interesting, but they can be very difficult to understand, even for a native Italian speaker. Ragazzi, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's journey through this aspect of Italian culture and language. And I do hope that by now you have a deeper understanding of what this aspect of the Italian language, the Italian dialects, mean for the country. And I hope you will be able to appreciate Italy and its beauty even more. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and also feel free to share this with any people you know that may have an interest or a connection with Italian dialects. I would really appreciate that, and it would really mean a lot. That's all for today. I hope you like this kind of videos, and I will see you soon. Ci vediamo presto. Ciao da Valentina.